Hi, my name is Derek Boyer. I am an artist and woodworker in Sarasota, Florida, and I've been trying to do a few more videos lately, and I've been thinking about doing a series called Painting Lessons Learned and trying to approach a few different topics. And in no way do I claim to be a master painter. I'm not even an art instructor, but I am a learner, and since I retired a few years ago, I feel like I've learned a lot about art and really reconnected with my passion for art. And I thought, well, why not try and help other people with these topics as well? And maybe you can learn a lesson without having to learn them the hard way like I've had to a lot of times. So the first installment of what I'm calling for now, Painting Lessons Learned, I thought I'd like to talk about using a limited palette when you're doing a painting. So let me give you a scenario, and you rhetorically tell me if this has ever happened to you. You're working on a painting, you don't get to paint very often, you struggle a little bit with color mixing, and there's a certain green, let's say, that you're looking for, right? You're painting some trees or whatever it is, you can't quite seem to get to the right green, so what do? You go to the art store, you buy a tube of a different sort of green that you think is it, you come back, you put it on the painting, it's not quite right, you try and mix it, you still can't get where you want to go. What do? You go back to the store, you buy another tube. You do this several times, and you're never quite happy with it. If you've ever been in that scenario, I think you could benefit from using a limited palette. Have you ever had to use charts or these wheels that they have to try and mix all these different colors with these crazy names to get to a color that you want? Well, I think you can benefit from using a limited palette. If you want to save yourself time when you're creating, if you want to save yourself money, for sure, if you want to save yourself frustration, then please consider using a limited palette of colors. So what is a limited palette? What am I talking about here? Well, of course, the definition of a palette would be the array of colors that an artist would use or would use in a particular painting. So when I'm talking about a limited palette, what I'm talking about is what many people suggest now is that you limit the number of colors that you're mixing from. And I'm going to suggest that you consider using simply the primary colors and white. So maybe using 4 and in some cases up to 6 different colors to mix all the colors that you need in any given painting. So is that possible? It may seem impossible if maybe you've mixed colors a different way in the past, or maybe you've used lots of different tubes of color. It may seem like that is not possible. But think about a printer as an example. Now, a color printer, and maybe even a photo quality color printer, how many ink cartridges does it have? Now, some have more, but the ones that I've had typically have had 4 cartridges. And would you be happy to be able to mix colors like a printer, like a photo quality color printer? I think I would be pretty happy with that, right? So most will have the primary colors, which are red, yellow, and blue. They may call them different things, but that's it, red, yellow, and blue. And typically they'll have black, but the black is really more for document printing. But the printer will have another color at its disposal, and that is white. And where does that come from? The paper, right? So with those 4 colors, not even typically even with the black, but with the primaries, red, yellow, blue, and that white paper, you can create some incredible images, right? And colors across the rainbow. So I'm suggesting that you do this. That's what it is. How do we do this? How do we start using a limited palette? Well, this isn't a color mixing class, so I'm not going to go into tremendous depth. I suggest that you look at other artists' videos like Chris Fornatero, who's a fantastic teacher. He's someone who got me interested in this topic of using a limited palette. He has some color mixing videos that I think you might find helpful. But what we really are talking about is using those primaries, so red, yellow, and blue, and those are colors that you cannot get. They're primaries because you can't get them by mixing any other color. I challenge you to get to a blue from red. You can't do it, right? You have to just add more and more and more blue till it's almost all blue. These are colors you can't get to by mixing other colors. I personally like phthalo blue, I like cadmium red, I like cadmium yellow, and a soft mixing white, but you don't have to use those. You can use what you like with some experimentation. So with these primaries, if you mix any of those 2 primaries, you get your secondary colors, right? We've all heard yellow and blue make green since we were kids. If you mix red and yellow, what do you get? Orange makes sense. If you mix blue and red, that's a little less obvious, but you end up with purple. So from these colors then, you can also mix what are called tertiary colors. So if you mix a primary with a secondary color, then you start getting some more interesting colors. You mix, as an example, blue and green together, you get a blue-green or a teal. If you mix blue and purple together, you get a violet. So it's so much easier to mix colors when you limit where you're coming from. If you limit the number of options, then it gets easier to mix colors. As an example, if you're trying to mix a color and you know that this color needs to get darker, well, you know it probably needs blue, right? That's the only color you probably have that's darker than what you're working with. If you need a value to get lighter, then chances are you need to add white or you need to add yellow. It gets pretty easy. If you need a color to maybe be less saturated, to be a little more grayed down, then all you have to do is add the complement to whatever color that you're trying to mix, and you start to get those desaturated colors. So it's a lot more intuitive. It gets a lot easier when you're starting off from the foundation, when you're starting off at the primaries. So I would like to give one caveat when it comes to just using maybe a palette of 4 colors and using the primaries to mix all the other colors. There are certain colors that I've found that I can't quite get to because I'm not starting from the right place. So every once in a great while, every few paintings, maybe there's a purple, a violet, a super deep red that I just can't seem to get to. And typically the culprit is either the blue that I'm using or the red that I'm using. So I might need to consider an ultramarine blue or a deeper sort of more purple red. But again, it's very rare, and through a little bit of experimentation, you can typically find out what works for you. Honestly, color mixing too, I think we beat ourselves up when we try and match a color exactly when we're doing a painting, but we don't have to match a reference exactly when we're making a painting. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't, right? We're not trying to reproduce what's already been made. We're using it as inspiration. So as long as we get our color close, and value is really the king. If we get the value close, then we're cooking, then we're in good shape. So the next question comes up. What am I going to do with all those tubes of paint, right? I've bought all these tubes over the years. What am I going to do with them? Maybe consider Jenga. And it's okay if you want to use more colors. If you don't want to use 4 or 6, if you want to have a few others that you know are favorites that you're going to use. There's this blue I always use for the sky. That's fine. You can use those. I have a few tubes of colors that I use to tone canvases with. I just don't want to take the time to mix these colors that I know that I like. I could mix them, but it saves me a minute or two, if that, but I still will have a few tubes of these other colors around. So there's nothing wrong with having a few others, or if you don't want to use just those, 4 or 6 that we talked about, you can use what you're comfortable with. So do you want to improve your color mixing? You want to get faster? I challenge you, just 5 paintings. Try it for 5 paintings, and then let me know if it doesn't work for you. I'll be shocked if it doesn't. So please consider liking and subscribing to my channel if you found this helpful. If you'd like to see other content or you have some suggestions for me or questions, please leave a comment. So stay positive, keep creating, and have fun.